Hello, and welcome to our session, Meet an Early Career Artist and Geoscientist. This session is one of several events that make up a larger AGU 2020 innovative session organized by and for early career scientists called Moving Beyond the Standard, a transdisciplinary virtual event for early career scientists. In this session, we'll introduce you to 3 early career geoscientists who use various art media, including dance, photography, and mixed media, to explore and express their research and self. We'll start off by introducing ourselves, the organizers of the session, and then we'll give a brief intro of each artist before they share the stories behind their work. A transcript of this session video is available at the link below, bit.ly art+geoscience script. My name is Sheila Saya. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at North Carolina State University.
I'm Daniela Fajani-Diaz, postdoctoral fellow at Colorado State University in the Atmospheric Science Department.
And my name is Caitlin Hall. I'm a PhD student at Arizona State University in environmental engineering and an editor at Consilience Journal.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daryl Reno, and I'm a postdoctoral associate at Florida International University in the STEM Transformation Institute. Adine Denton is trained as a geoscientist, historian, and dancer, which informs her scientific and artistic research process. She is an avid astrohumanist focused on approaching future planetary exploration from a scientific and humanistic perspective. Adine is currently a PhD student in planetary geology at Purdue University, where her thesis work focuses on using massive impact basins to probe the surface of Pluto. Outside of research, she pursues both dance and choreography with local dance companies. Her choreographic practice investigates the intersection between human space exploration, the geologic evolution of the solar system, and the self. Dr. Robert Sander Hunter is a geologist with a passion for the natural world, which is how he found his way to both geology and photography. Sander completed his Bachelor of Science in Geological and Earth Sciences at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and his PhD at Cornell University. His dissertation focused on linking scales of observation from the micron to the continent scale in order to improve our understanding of continental evolution. Sander is currently working in the energy industry as a geologist specializing in reservoir quality. Dr. Annette S. Lee is an astrophysicist, artist, and the director of the Native Skywatchers Research and Programming Initiative. She has over 3 decades of experience in education as a teacher, university instructor, teacher educator, program administrator, professional visual artist, and researcher. Annette's work as a visual artist lives at the nexus of art, science, and culture. Receiving an MFA from Yale School of Art in 2000 with a focus on painting and a thesis show entitled Star Medicine, the work has since grown into mixed media, digital media, and curating museum exhibits. Currently, she is a co-curator and Indigenous design advisor for an Indigenous astronomy traveling exhibit called One Sky, Many Worlds, Indigenous Voices in Astronomy, which will be opening in May 2022.
Hi there. I'm Adine Denton, a planetary scientist, geologist, and PhD candidate at Purdue University. But I'm also a dancer and choreographer. I've danced and choreographed in between 2 to 5 productions a year throughout my scientific career. And today, I'll share with you a little bit about my experience as a scientist artist and how that has affected both the art that I make and the opportunities that I have to make it. And I'll explain using one of my most recent pieces as an example. I've actually long avoided talking about my art or about myself as an artist, not necessarily for personal reasons, though imposter syndrome is undeniably a part of it. But to preserve credibility with my peers and mentors as I try to focus on building a scientific career. In most parts of academia, there really is no reward for pouring untold hours into a side hustle, let alone one that cannot be immediately monetized or funneled back into my primary research area. When I started grad school, I was told to pursue my interests in secret, and I accepted that because I thought that that was the price that I had to pay for the PhD. Hang up the rest of myself in a closet like a set of clothes that I could put back on in 5 years. But thankfully, for me at least, things didn't work out like that. I kept dancing. I kept choreographing, even when I left so much of myself in the lab that when I stared into my dancers' faces in rehearsal, I worried that I had no energy left to give them. I managed to find mentors, and mentors found me. Everything that I've accomplished in the last 5 years is because of people who thought that I had a voice worth listening to, that being a dancer who does science is something that can contribute to the community. So I quietly made dances in my small free hours year after year until eventually I realized that somehow along the way I'd kind of developed my own dance science perspective on the world. Lately, I've been using that sort of perspective to make dances about human space exploration that blend my scientific expertise with my artistic vision to explore the interesting parts of that intersection between them. And today I'll tell you about why I think that intersection is so interesting and so important, something that we should continue, using a piece that I made called Breaking the Roche Limit, which is about Apollo 17, the end of the first era of human spaceflight and the beginning of everything that comes afterwards. So, why make a dance about space exploration at all? Dance, in my opinion, works best, that is, evokes a reaction from the audience when it hews itself closely to the human experience. Joy, pain, interpersonal relationships, these make for compelling dances because we, the audience, recognize a reenactment of our own existence as it lives and dies on the stage in front of us. But space exploration? What does it mean? Who cares about it? The moon landings were made up of 12 white men and everyone who came behind them. But that's a very difficult story to tell and to relate to. In a narrative made with human bodies and a stage and a limited amount of time, in a dance that I make, I can't express that grand history. I can really only tell you a story, one story, and it's usually mine. In the case of the dance that I made, there are two things. There is the long and complex history of the US space program, and then there's the shorter, but no less complicated story of how that history intersected with mine. Space exploration is a huge part of my life. Technically, it's part of my job as a grad student, but long before I became a professional nerd, drowning in background reading, I was a kid growing up in Texas where even the license plates had the space shuttle on them. And there are these myths that are associated with space exploration, and the Apollo program in particular. Stories that tell us that despite tragedy and strife, a group of talented, hardworking people can achieve the impossible. That science and technology can be a gateway to the incredible beauty of other worlds. That when we leave Earth, we carry the best of humanity with us. Even today, with all the imperfections that come with delving deeper and deeper into the history behind the Apollo program as an adult, there's still a part of me that believes there's truth in those stories. In the end, I keep making dances because there's so much that I have to say, and for me, no other way to say it. In making Breaking the Roche Limit, I realized that what I was saying to my audience was, sit with me and listen to this dream that I have, a dream that I've carried with me my whole life. Let me tell you about how I saw myself in a narrative that both was and wasn't ever really meant for me. I didn't make this dance as a scientist trying to educate people about the universe. I made this dance to try to explain, at least a little bit, why space exploration reminds me of everything good about humanity. Once I decided that I wanted to make a dance about space exploration in general, and about the Apollo program in particular, I had to figure out what that would actually look like. What I, as the choreographer, could do to make the dance effective. That is, makes it work for the audience. And I knew from the beginning that this piece would be a solo, performed by me, which made things very difficult from a visualization perspective. However, when you're making a dance with a budget of $0, choreographing a solo is truly the easiest way to go. So the question then became, how can one body on a stage convey something as complex as the legacy of the Apollo program is to me? Well, the methodology behind how I tried to do that falls into two interconnected categories. First, the translation of specific scientific ideas into movement. And second, the transmission of the specific feeling that I, the choreographer and dancer, feel when I consider space exploration. And I'll start with the translation of scientific ideas into movement. This became the movement framework that I developed, which was the basis for the piece, designed to very loosely reflect the formation of our solar system. And in the iteration of several rounds of experimentation with this concept that actually made it into the piece, I built a movement phrase composed of these 5 physical processes translated onto my body. First, the movement of gas and dust in the protosolar nebula. Second, the accretion of material to form planetesimals. Third, impacts into those planetesimals and protoplanets. Fourth, the dispersion of that impact ejecta, just as critical as the impacts in moving material around the solar system. And 5, formation of smaller objects like the moon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is this movement framework and its meaning recognizable to the average audience member on their first viewing? Almost certainly not. But for me, building a framework that was rooted in the science of the birth of the solar system itself forced me to think about the relationship of the human body to the space that we're trying to explore. For me, these 5 physical processes are the building blocks of the solar system, the Earth, and us. And in building them physically into my piece, I tied myself in a really small way to a process that began long before me and will continue long after. So that's the movement framework. But there's the other part, which is the transmission of the feelings. And to me, this is just as, if not more critical than the movement framework that I use to create the piece. This is what the audience will be able to perceive as they watch. And as I messed around with my movements, where to put them, how to use them, I had to find a way to take those movements and take myself into the space in a way that the audience would be able to abstract and connect to the feelings that I have about space exploration, which is this wild mix of fear, elation, sadness, and hope. I settled on 2 spatial patterns, which was first a progression of orbits and a long diagonal from upstage to downstage. Why did I use these 2 things in particular? Well, the attraction to space exploration for many people is space's almost indescribable size and the correspondingly massive confidence of humans to dare to step forward far beyond safety into the unknown. The combination of orbits and diagonals do 2 things. First, they reflect the natural organization of the universe, which directs itself both into distinct patterns and ever onwards towards a future that remains forever uncertain. And second, they also echo the circularity that's inherent in trying to do something like spaceflight. We fail. We stand back up. We repeat. Sometimes that path does lead us in a circle, but sometimes, if we're lucky, it leads us to where we're trying to go. My dance, Breaking the Roche Limit, begins with me opening a door, and it ends with me closing that door behind myself. And that's because journeys aren't infinite. They have to end. Stories, though, stories can be told again and again and again. When Apollo 17 departed lunar soil, it was the end of an era, whether people wanted it to be or not. Whenever I put a dance on stage, I wonder if it's the end of my career, if this is the last dance I will ever get to make, and if I'm okay with this one being the end. The answer is always yes and no. I am indescribably glad to have been able to make a piece about what space exploration means to me, about opening the greatest of doors into the unknown. I'm also incredibly grateful to the mentors who helped me get this far, and I'm proud of what I made, but I will always keep hoping that I can keep going. So, what does it mean to be a scientist artist? Honestly, it means endlessly disappointing a wide array of scientists and artists all at once. It means never knowing if you're a real art person or a real scientist either, except for the moments when you, and only you, remember that you are. It means having to make time out of nothing and turning seconds into dances and never, ever making any money. But sometimes I just want to tell a story about how one time these men went to the moon and how I learned to look up. And there happens to be both a stage nearby and enough people willing to let me do it. So I pulled together enough energy to give it my best shot. And art and science somehow happens again. Thank you.
My name is Sander Hunter. I have a PhD in metamorphic petrology and structural geology, and I'm a photographer. For my PhD, I studied how continents form, looking at how mountains are built through the interplay of deformation and metamorphism in the Southwest United States. Since my PhD work, I've been working in industry, and I've studied and applied clastic diagenesis, machine learning, and geophysics, among other things. As a photographer, my subjects of interest vary greatly, although the majority of them are in some way related to nature, which is really the thread that connects the artist side of me to my inner scientist. My science journey started in 4th and 5th grade with a teacher who introduced us to the scientific method and scientific inquiry. I was far from a model student or even really a very good student, but he had a belief in us that we could all ask and answer meaningful, real questions, and that belief really stuck with me. It didn't transform me into a better student, and it didn't, change me overnight, but I held on to it all the way through the rest of school and even till now, and it's really motivated me to achieve what I have thus far. My direction later in life was cemented by an influential teacher in college. His course really captivated me, and subsequently, a simple act of kindness on his behalf of giving me a job at the Geology Museum really helped me find a sense of community and fellow nerds that I could talk with, and really helped me feel at home. After college, my decision to continue my pursuit of geology was really driven by my desire to achieve something that was an actual contribution to the scientific community all those years after my elementary school teacher showed us that we really could ask meaningful questions. Unlike my journey with science, the path that led me to photography actually started at home. So my mom has been a constant source of art influence and inspiration for as long as I can remember. Her art forms have varied from quilting to pastels to photography and back again. And she gave me my first digital camera when I was in college. It was a hand-me-down from her. And I took to it right away, because where geology and science really provided me with that sense of community, photography helped me balance by appeasing my inner introvert. Photography walks in the woods were a way to explore, but for me, more importantly, they were a way to clear my mind. So my favorite photographs have come at times when I was stressed or emotional or had a lot of just science on my brain, and taking the camera and looking through the lens helped me put that all aside, and really just to see a good photograph, it takes all of my concentration in an almost meditative way. And so after I would go on my photo walk, it would give me a chance to reorder my thoughts and kind of take a new perspective and new way of looking at everything. Or, at least I found a bit of calm and peace of mind for a bit. Interestingly, for me, science and art rarely meet in my world. That is in part intentional. What I like so much about science is that there is an exact answer, even if there are many ways to get to it. And on the other hand, what I like so much about photography is that there is no real right and wrong. There are rules, but those rules are meant to be broken. And some of the most interesting photos you can take are the ones where you break all those rules. That said, my basic understanding of science has really influenced how I look at photography, because just of that fundamental understanding of, how light interacts with the sensor and how it's captured and stretched and frozen over time. So one question that came up when I was preparing for this discussion was the question of how my art is received by fellow scientists. to be honest, I don't really share much of the two worlds with each other. In part, that's because I am, as I said, an introvert and I'm shy. But a larger part of that is probably because of imposter syndrome. It's something that I suspect a lot of us have dealt with from time to time. Just not feeling like what I actually have or what I actually contribute is really as good as what everyone else around me is doing. But to anyone out there that is questioning their credentials as an artist or as a scientist or as both, the only piece of advice I could give you, and it's something that's really kept me going, is that it's not really about being the best. Experts don't become experts overnight, either in science or in art. The process is just as important as the end result. And even if this particular end result is something you've been working on for a long time, and in the end, you're disappointed with it, or others are disappointed with it, just remember there will always be another end result, and you can always try again. And really, the process, I know it's cliche, is just as important as the end result. And finally, I guess, so the question might come to mind, so why did I, the introvert who doesn't really like to talk about my art very much, decide that I would agree to talk at this conference, which is one of the largest conferences for our profession? What did I hope that you listening out there might take away from it? Honestly, maybe a little bit of confidence. Not necessarily that you're going to be the best or the number one expert in your field, or that you're going to become a famous artist, but have the confidence that if you put in time and effort, it will turn into something gratifying. That's really what's driven me to where I am and let me pursue and enjoy both science and art. So hopefully it's something that can help you along the way too. So yeah, thanks for listening, and I hope that you find something that brings you joy and a bit of peace of mind too. Bye.
Mitakoye Oyasin to all my relatives. My name is Annette Lee. I am mixed race Lakota. My family name is Wambli Luta, Red Eagle. My communities are Ojibwe and Dakota Lakota. I'm speaking to you from the land we call Minnesota Makoche, the land where the water reflects the sky. I also want to acknowledge that this is COVID time. In the fall 2020, I want to acknowledge all the people that have died. 250,000 people here in the US, over 1 million people worldwide, and still counting, and those that weren't even counted. My heart goes out to them and to their families. This is a really dark and hard time of suffering for everyone on the planet. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, with stars and art and horses and ocean, always in my blood. I am often asked, what came first, astronomy or art? My answer is, well, neither, or in a way, both. Here's the thing, ever since I can remember, I have had spirit dreams with the stars. What's a spirit dream? A spirit dream is when it's more clear and you feel more awake than when you really are awake, but you're dreaming. And my spirit dreams were, and always have been, in bright, vivid colors. In fact, in starlight. So what came first for me is a clear, strong, and colorful memory that I came from the stars. Memory of a relationship came first. Memory. My first memory. Clearly the stars were my oldest living relatives. And I had this spirit dream repeatedly. And I believe from the first time when I was still in the womb and came through the doorway, the star doorway, there at the center of the scoop in the Big Dipper is the place in our Dakota Lakota star knowledge resides a spirit named Towi, Blue Spirit Woman. And that was the doorway I came through, and I remember. So what came first? How did I get interested in art? It's an old memory of the stars that came through with me. The Dakota elder Ida Downwind talks about Towi and how she whispers the last bit of instructions to us as we come through the doorway into our mother's womb and into this physical life from the star world. That might be the very memory that I hold. I have always loved the stars, but I also really liked math. The patterns and the numbers were like a reprieve from the chaos and uncertainty of a bumpy childhood. In math classes, there were problems that could be solved, relationships that followed a logical order, a crystalline structure that was all very welcoming. When I started my first year at UC Berkeley, I told everyone I was going to double major in art and astronomy. And a common reply was to ask if I had just opened the class catalog and just picked the first two majors. Over 3 decades later, I found myself the proud owner of 5 college degrees, 2 in art and 3 in science. Many, many times I was told, Just pick one, and then it was not possible to do both, that art had to be a hobby. This was not an option for me. In 1992, I completed my first hamblecha, trying for a vision, fasting ceremony. After 4 days and 4 nights of no food and very little water, I knew the following. I am made of 4 parts: body, heart, mind, and spirit. And without a doubt, the spirit leads. The ceremony taught me that when fasting, the physical body actually begins to shut down. This kind of prayer allows the other parts to shine more brightly, even though the bad part is it involves a lot of sacrificing and some suffering. The message was loud and clear. If I continued the straight path, undergraduate to grad school in astronomy, a critical part of my being would die off, my spirit. And so in 1995, I went back to college, starting all over again as an undergraduate in painting. My practice of art closely parallels a spiritual practice, playground for my heart and soul. So after graduating with an MFA from Yale School of Art in 2000, I was dreadfully unemployed. Suddenly I was offered a faculty teaching job at Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College in Minnesota near the Fond du Lac Ojibwe Reservation. Ironically, I was hired to teach mathematics to pre-service teachers who were also in the Native student cohort. And so I taught all the art courses. I remember it was the first time in the first place where it was actually okay to do both art and science. I remember feeling a sense of fitting in. Here is where I also taught astronomy and archaeoastronomy, Native Skywatchers. I remember students would sometimes say, "Am I in an art class or a science class?" And I would just smile. Now I understand that from an Indigenous perspective and Indigenous knowledge systems, there is not the same silo system of separating academic areas into completely separate disciplines. And then in 2007, I founded the Native Skywatchers Project, and in 2010, the Native Skywatchers Grassroots Research and Programming Initiative took off. Our goal is to revitalize our Indigenous astronomy, starting with our own communities, Ojibwe and Dakota Lakota. Through combined NASA funding, university, and tribal college funding, we designed our first Native star maps to be delivered at our Native Skywatchers Summer Educator Workshop in 2012. Wow, the demand, interest, and continued funding has fueled this work ever since. Now we have built many resources in addition to the workshops and star maps, such as planispheres, lesson plans, storytelling videos, artwork, children's storybooks, constellation guidebooks, and more recently, museum exhibits like One Sky Many Astronomies and One Sky Many Worlds, Indigenous Voices in Astronomy. My MFA thesis show at Yale School of Art was called Star Medicine in 2000. These were a series of delicately layered oil paintings on canvas. One painting was even referred to by the most powerful art faculty member as one of the best paintings he had ever seen. I have always had a fondness for drawing. Something about the process feels painfully good. It's like practicing stillness. Good rewards come of it, but it's slow and quiet and takes some discipline. My artistic form varies. I started out in two-dimensional art, trained as a painter, then moved into mixed media. Now my art has evolved to have many layers to it, like a tree with many branches and deep roots. Strongly based in process and narrative, my practice is parallel to a spiritual practice and that doing art feeds my spirit. To say this another way, we cannot go without food and water for more than a few days or weeks. We cannot go without air for more than 2 minutes. Our physical bodies demand nurturing. Similarly, the heart and spirit demand care. The practice of art nurtures my heart and spirit in a way that is, well, deeply rewarding and somewhat mysterious. More recently, my art forms have evolved into the digital arts, digital media, like short storytelling videos, graphic design, children's books, and of course, designing museum exhibits. Every tool has its magic. Doing my art science practice makes me feel like a whole person. It makes me feel brave enough to make mistakes and to walk down a path of the unknown, of mystery, and go on an adventure.
Pilamia, Miigwech. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for taking the time to attend this session and listen to the stories of the 3 featured artists plus geoscientists, Adine Denton, Dr. Sander Hunter, and Dr. Annette Lee. If you'd like to check out more of their work, you can see their websites listed here.
We want to bring the intersectionality of art and geoscience beyond this session. So we're partnering with the science, poetry, and art journal Consilience to run a special geoscience themed issue. If you're interested in submitting your geo and atmospheric science themed poetry, visual and performing arts, head over to bit.ly/congeo20. And also we're inviting folks to be either a guest reviewer or a guest editor for this journal. So if you want to look at what a peer-reviewed science and art journal looks like, head over to bit.ly/congeo20 review. And if you want to find out a little bit more about the journal and what our process looks like, there's more info at consilience-journal.com. But I'm going to pass it over to Sam Illingworth, the lead editor and founder of Consilience, for a little description as to the process behind Consilience and how to get more involved.
Hi everyone, my name's Sam Illingworth and I'm here to talk to you about Consilience, which is an organisation that I founded and helped to run. And Consilience is the world's first science and poetry and art journal. And what we do is we invite people to submit their poetry and their artwork to us. And then we work with our team of reviewers and editors to work with those poets and artists to help turn their poetry and art into something that we can publish. So unlike many other poetry and arts journals, we don't have a desk reject. We work with everyone so that we can help to improve their work, because we don't believe that anything comes to us completely perfect or completely imperfect. So we use the peer review system that we see in science to help work with our poets and our artists. And I'm here to talk to you about the special issue for geosciences that we're launching with AGU, and just to invite you to submit your work, to submit your poetry, to submit your drawings, to submit your paintings, to submit your sculptures, to submit your music, to submit whatever creative piece you'd like. And we'll work with the team at Consilience and also ConsiliArt, which is our visual art and artwork branch of Consilience, to help you publish this work with us and with the journal. We're also looking for people to volunteer as reviewers and editors for this special issue, the theme of which is the geosciences. So if you'd like to do that, please do get in touch. We'll provide information for how you can both submit your work and also work with us as reviewers and editors. But we just want to say we're a really inclusive and open organization. We welcome all voices across all different media, and we're really excited to be working with you and helping to create this special issue all about the geosciences. Thank you.
Besides working with Consilience Journal to build opportunities to share art, we've been working to build a list of artists+geoscientists that is viewable to the public. You can find that list by visiting bit.ly art+geoscience. Thank you for taking the time to attend this session. We really appreciate it. If you'd like to keep in touch with us, you can find us on Twitter. And please also remember to fill out the survey at this link, bit.ly art+geoscience survey. Thanks, and have a great rest of your fall meeting.